Ryan Blaney. McMurray in the number 1. That paint scheme throwing back to when Bill Elliott drove and had the McDonald's Mac Tonight paint scheme. And right behind him, the iconic number 21 from the Wood Brothers.
Looks like McMurray's struggling a little bit. Tony Stewart did ultimately get by him, and now the pressure is on from the behind. So again, one of those guys we talked about in the chase, needing to have a good run, having to struggle early to start.
So as we go down through 1 and 2, you see how difficult this area of the racetrack is to pass. The 21 is going to try to be patient, try to work underneath the 1 of Jamie McMurray, but you see there's just not enough room. And then look at the sun. We discussed it. All the way down the backstretch, almost blind for these drivers trying to judge that entry speed into the difficult turn 3, and then you enter into the shade.
Immediate switch from sun to shade for the drivers as they fight.
For a while. Yeah, for some of it last year, I remember seeing you had your hand up in front of your shield going down the back straightaway. It was pretty bad. I'm just not used to running it. I guess I should have put that shield visor on there.
And with the earlier start this year, it's going to play havoc on how the car handles on the racetrack. And as you see riding down the backstretch right now with Kevin Harvick, that sunset, he said, is not bad right now, but in about 30 minutes, it's going to be worse. As we rode on board with Ryan Blaney earlier, you can see he had a little visor he can pop down. Kevin Harvick does not have that. Jeff, that's a tough thing to deal with as a driver, isn't it?
It really is, and it's something you really need to think about before the race. Knowing the race is going to start an hour earlier, that's something that the team should have reminded Kevin of. They should have had a little bit of a plan, because it is very difficult getting into turn 3. Listen, when you drive down there and the sun's not in your eyes, the groove's not defined. There's no lines on the racetrack down there, at least. If you're going to run the top, you have to commit to the very top. You can't just kind of run the top. If you're going to make lap time, you have to be right against that wall.
Well, and if you're going to commit to a paint scheme, Jimmy Johnson has done it. That's Dale Earnhardt Sr.'s rookie paint scheme. And oh, by the way, the Silver Fox won the Southern 500.com/live.
Riding along with Clint Boyer. And Clint Boyer's number 15, a throwback to the 72 of Benny Parsons, who won the championship in 1973.
Cannot, so many races he called that I watched as a kid. It was just great. He did a great job.
One of the greatest ambassadors of the sport ever, and also a 2017 Hall of Fame inductee. Very, very deserving.
As we ride on board with Clint Boyer and you see a car go by, and when you look at this racetrack, there are cars everywhere. When we talk about a speedway or a
the yellow bar means they're top 16 in points. So drivers that are top 16 in points after the next 2 races will advance and fight for the championship at the end of the year.
And Rick, we're on board with Martin Truex Jr. A lot of cars have throwback paint schemes to history in the sport. With the paint scheme on Martin Truex cars, throwback to his sponsor, 100 years for auto owners. This is the paint scheme to honor that sponsor, and he's looking good, looked good all weekend. We've seen the 78 have so many great races this year, but keeps tripping up with mistakes. Can they avoid the mistakes? Can they get it ironed out? Remember, the 78 won the Southern.
Pitted from 27th, but you can see the speed that he has with the 4 fresher tires, and everyone else out on the racetrack trying to gain some position back.
So that is something Kelly Yarborough would have done, I have a feeling.
Look at that. He's just going to.
And you see the sun right
in order to be able to do it. Mike?
Dave, this is the 5th time Jeff Gordon has been behind the wheel of the 88, subbing for Dale Earnhardt Jr. But unlike the first 4, Jeff Gordon said this was the first time during this stint where he felt like he was
running that classic Chip Ganassi paint scheme, that target scheme. It's easier to pick out. Maybe not as easy as this one, though. Nothing is easier to pick out than that, simple petty blue and orange STP 43 1979 colors. We've seen that car for years. That one is pretty easy to recognize on the racetrack.
So iconic.
A little further back behind these guys, but just ahead of Paul Menard in the 4 car is Greg Biffle, Chase Elliott, Ryan Newman, Tony Stewart. So they're going to have to get going because the leader is coming.
Kevin Harvick, impressive, mistake-free so far. 91 laps into the race, he's led every one.
And as pit stops get ready to start happening under green, you're going to have to be careful not to try to get on
this first caution period of the evening.
But we can look back to last year. Carl Edwards was 2 laps down at one time and came back and won the race. So That doesn't put Jimmy Johnson and these other guys that are 1 or 2 laps down out of it yet.
Actually, we had 3 cautions.
Track is going to go through a change here. The sun is finally setting. It's going to cool off some, so they're going to have to work with that part of it. You know, you talked about Chris Buescher. This might be the thing that propels him, you know, and keeps him inside that top 30, because he had gone a lap down, but he hadn't pitted yet, so he got the wave around there. He's about on the lead lap up there running. That could be a huge night points-wise for him. May make Richmond a lot easier for him next week.
We'll talk more about that. The next one is going to make those kind of headlines for this NASCAR, this most competitive racing in the world. We've got some good candidates. This is the track that really tests them the most.
Yeah, it really does. And here's a champion 3 times. And Tony Stewart hasn't won the Southern 500. Hadn't won here. That's something he would dearly like to do. We heard him say in the pre-race show that it would be more important for him to win this race tonight than win the championship in his final year, just because that's how much respect he has for this. Who's going to be that next Tony Stewart? You look around, a lot of talent. Is Kyle Larson.
More than any other track that I ever raced on, it was the most challenging track. And as a result, it's the track that I like the most.
Well, it's the one you won by 14 laps on.
I was lucky, very lucky.
Stewart is up to 11th position in number 14 in his quest to win this 500.
Here's Eric Amarola. You can see how concentrated he is. He's not moving those eyes, moving that steering wheel, though. That's a constant here at Darlington. You're always moving that steering wheel.
You're either catching it or setting it, one or the other. Catching it as that car begins to want to go up that track, head for that fence.
We talk about racing the track, and his focus is on the racetrack, but when you're trying to make a pass, you know, a little bit of that attention has to be taken away to look at that car. If he happens to slip just a little bit, you're wide open in the throttle. You don't want to create a bad situation for yourself. So that so many things going on that makes this tough.
You have to be offense, you have to be defense, all at the same time. Let's go down to Kelly.
And that's Eric Almirola in those iconic day glow colors there on the Petty car. It has admittedly not been the season that they had hoped for. They're now building those cars in shop at Richard Petty Motorsports. Talking to Trent Owens, the crew chief on that car, he just said, not the year that we've anticipated, so they're going to spend the rest of this season just trying to bring new ideas, new cars to the track in hopes that they can start building.
Tony has actually driven himself. Here's what he had to say on the radio about that.
Ahead of me, and I feel like I'm looking at myself. Kind of creepy, isn't it? I mean, oddly enough, it really is. It's like an out-of-body experience. Yeah, I've kind of wanted, there's a lot of times I'd like to have that happen, though.
Stewart having a little fun on the radio, of course, looking at his Xfinity Series paint scheme, which Joey Logano is running right now, and also his Bobby Labonte's paint scheme, and his rookie paint scheme in the Prince Cup Series that Carl Edwards is running this.
My gracious, they were there before you were, Ned. Down
Yes,
at
they
the
were.
track in Daytona on the beach, no less.
They were a team in the very first races of NASCAR.
The pride of Patrick County, Virginia. Great.
So he's just very, very good. So very talented. Almost won the race last week at Michigan. Doing a nice job here tonight.
Remember, he wins the Xfinity race here. We talk about the lady in back and the difficulty of this racetrack, but this young man just seems to race beyond his years, much like his father. Very calm on the radio, just seems to really understand the goal of all 500 miles.
Chase Elliott's father, Bill Elliott, a Hall of Famer that's on hand for the race tonight, as about 16 or 17 other Hall.
Not a good situation here.
Crew Chief Colburn trying to keep him calm, and guess what happened 2 laps later? We have a monitor down here where we can see who runs the fastest laps. He ran the fastest lap of all 40 cars.
For right front too, but yeah, that's been a problem for the Ford team for Kevin Harvick all season long. They also had that happen to them at Bristol. And Steve, you know, as a crew chief, it's something you want to clean up before the chase. Just 2 races left in the regular season. You cannot afford that in the postseason.
Well, Marty, we saw last year this 4-car and Kevin Harvick go into the first round in a must-win situation at Dover and pulled off that win. They want to try to avoid that fate this year, not put themselves in that position. Slow pit stops is one thing that can hurt you throughout the chase.
And Levin caught him by surprise at Michigan when he wasn't able to outrun the 20 or the 42 of Kyle Larson and get the win.
Yeah, we've seen all here. We know what the problem is, and then basically, you know, these engines. He was running 13th.
I mean, these engines are designed to run at optimal temperature.
Run that he wanted, but Smoke will head to the garage area with an engine that has now officially expired. They told him, go as long as you can. Well, it went 317 laps. That's as far as it would go.
Could be. The teams can go from here on fuel. It comes down to what pit crew can perform. Can the 4 of Kevin Harvick recover, maybe gain a spot or two? I really believe Kevin Harvick can win it from inside the top 5, but he's going to